My name is Amara Osei, and in the morning of my engagement party, I found an envelope on my vanity. No name, no stamp, just a thick cream rectangle sitting between my perfume bottle and the small framed photo of Daniel and me from our trip to Santorini. The one where he'd laughed so hard his eyes had disappeared into crescents, and I had thought, for one foolish and unguarded moment, this is enough. This is everything. I stared at it for a long time before I picked it up. Inside was money, more than I'd ever held in my hands at once. And beneath the neat stack of bills, folded in thirds, was a single note card. The handwriting was elegant and controlled, the kind of script that had been taught by private tutors in wood-paneled rooms I would never be invited into. Leave my son. Take this. Disappear quietly. In and spare yourself the humiliation of what comes next. This is your only warning. I set the card down, smoothed it flat against the dresser, and read it again. Then I looked up and saw her. Patricia Langford stood in the doorway of my bedroom, wearing a pale blue wrap dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her posture was flawless. Her expression was composed, almost bored, as if she hadn't just left a bribe on my vanity, as if she was simply checking whether I'd understood. Our eyes met in the mirror. Neither of us spoke, and in the silence between us, heavy with things unsaid, things she didn't know I knew, I made a decision. I picked up my lipstick, uncapped it slowly, and smiled at my reflection. "Tell Daniel I'll be ready in 20 minutes, I said. Before we continue, make sure to like, or subscribe and comment on where you're watching from. Let me tell you what everyone got wrong about me. They saw a woman who had come from nothing, a girl raised by a single mother in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Baltimore, who had scraped her way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, who had somehow wandered into Daniel Langford's orbit at a charity gala 3 years ago, and stayed. They saw what they expected to see, someone grateful, someone lucky, and someone who should know better than to dream too big. Patricia Langford had never tried to hide her distaste for me. In the beginning, she'd been subtle. A slightly too long pause before greeting me, a tendency to speak about her son's future in ways that conspicuously didn't include me. Then, as the relationship deepened, the politeness had thinned, and she'd begun making small comments about my background, my family, and the neighborhood I'd grown up in. "You're a lovely girl, Amara, but Daniel has a certain kind of life ahead of him. Are you sure you're prepared for what that requires?" Patricia Langford said once. "Thanksgiving dinner during our first year together, Daniel always defended me. He was consistent in that and steady. He would squeeze my hand under the table and catch my eye with an expression that said, 'Ignore her.' And I did, mostly, because ignoring difficult things was something I had learned very young. But here is what Patricia never knew about me. I was not wandering when I walked into that gala. I had a badge that said press, a recorder in my clutch, and 18 months of investigative research sitting in a locked folder on my laptop at home. And I was a financial journalist. And the Langford Group, Daniel's family's private equity firm, had been quietly bleeding money from a pension fund that belonged to 932 working-class families across 3 states. Families like mine. I had not come looking for love. I had come looking for proof. The engagement party was exactly what you would expect from Patricia Langford. 40 tables dressed in ivory and gold, a jazz quartet, waitstaff who moved like ghosts, flowers flown in from somewhere that definitely wasn't a supermarket, and 200 guests who air-kissed and smiled and said, "We're so thrilled for you both," while their eyes measured me from heel to hairline. Daniel was magnetic that night. He always was in rooms like this, comfortable in a way that only people raised in money ever truly are. That particular ease that looks like confidence, but is really just the absence of fear. He kept his hand at the small of my back. He laughed easily. He introduced me with a warmth that made several women look at me with something close to envy. And I played my part perfectly. I had been playing it for 2 years. What I had not anticipated What had genuinely surprised me, somewhere around month 4 of the original plan, was Daniel himself. He was not what I expected. The sons of men like his father were usually one of two things, either carbon copies, groomed for cruelty and dressed in charm, or soft, rebellious disappointments who spent their trust funds on bad art and worse decisions. Daniel was neither. He was good. In the quiet, unglamorous way that goodness actually looks, up close. He remembered birthdays. He called his grandmother every Sunday. He had fired a CFO 2 years ago for falsifying numbers and taken the legal and reputational hit rather than cover it up. I had spent a long time trying to figure out if it was an act. I was still not entirely certain it wasn't, but the doubt had cost me. That was the part I hadn't planned for. It started 6 weeks before the party. A phone left face down on the kitchen counter when it had never been face down before. Late arrivals home with explanations that were too detailed, the way lies always are, packed with unnecessary specifics that honest people never bother to provide. Then the calls. 3 times in 1 week I had walked into a room and watched Daniel's entire posture change. A subtle but unmistakable closing off, a slight turn away, a voice dropped to a register I couldn't catch. The first time, I told myself it was work. The Langford Group was always managing some crisis or another. The second time, I paid closer attention. The third time, I followed him. He went to a coffee shop on the west side of the city, not his neighborhood, not anywhere he had reason to be. I sat in my car across the street, engine off, and watched through the glass. She was already there when he arrived, seated at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug, dressed simply. No performance in it, no artifice. She was beautiful in the way that doesn't require effort, which somehow made it worse. Daniel sat across from her. He leaned forward, the posture of intimacy, of urgency, of something shared. They talked for 40 minutes. When he left, he did not touch her, did not embrace her. But she watched him go with an expression I recognized without wanting to. That was not a woman having a business lunch. I sat in the car for a long time after they'd both gone. Then I pulled out my phone and began to search. Her name was Simone Berg. And once I knew her name, everything else came quickly. Because that is the nature of secrets. They are never as buried as people believe. They leave trails, paper ones, digital ones, the kind that live in county records and corporate filings and old photographs uploaded to social media accounts that haven't been touched in years. Simone Berg had grown up in Connecticut. She had a degree in architecture. She had, 7 years ago, been in a serious relationship with a man named Daniel Langford. They had been engaged, briefly. The engagement had ended, quietly, suddenly, with no public explanation, around the same time that Patricia Langford had allegedly made a sizable private donation to a foundation that Simone's father chaired. A donation to make something go away. I sat back in my chair and stared at my screen. Patricia had done this before, and then the second thing, the thing that made my hands go still. Simone Berg was a named partner in a small architecture firm, a firm that had, 8 months ago, quietly submitted a proposal for a major urban development project, a project funded by and contracted to the Langford Group. Daniel was not having an affair. He was meeting the woman his mother had paid to disappear from his life 7 years ago, the woman who had come back, not for love, or not only for love, for the contract she was owed, and Patricia was terrified. She came back 4 days later. No ceremony this time. She let herself into my apartment with the spare key Daniel didn't know she'd copied, which told me everything I needed to know about the kind of woman I was dealing with. She sat across from me at my kitchen table like we were about to have tea. "I'm doubling the offer," she said. I looked at her. "Good morning to you too, Patricia." "Don't be clever. It doesn't suit women who are pretending." Something shifted in the room. I kept my expression neutral. "What does that mean?" "It means I've had you looked into." She folded her hands on the table, Her rings caught the morning light. A journalist, freelance mostly, but your real work. The investigative pieces, those are rather impressive. Several of them involve financial crimes. The silence stretched. "Nah, you are not in love with my son," she said. "You came here for something, and I am willing to pay you to take it and leave." I studied her face, the certainty there, the arrogance of a woman who had always been able to purchase her way out of inconvenience. "What if you're wrong?" I said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "About which part?" I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city for a long moment before I turned back. "I did come here with a plan," I said. "You're right about that. I came because the Ashford Group has been siphoning from the Meridian Pension Fund for 4 years. 900 families. I have documentation, testimony, a source inside your accounting department who is prepared to go on record." Patricia had gone very still. "But here is the part you got wrong." I met her eyes. "I fell in love with your son, and it made everything complicated." "So take the money and write your story," she said, voice sharp now, the composure fracturing at the edges. "You get what you came for. At the cost of destroying someone, I stopped, looked away. No, I needed to know if Daniel knew, if he was part of it. And he's not. I had confirmed it 3 weeks ago. Daniel had flagged irregular transfers himself, internally, and been blocked by the board. A board his mother controlled. He thought it was an accounting irregularity. He didn't know how deep it went. He's clean. Patricia stood slowly. She was recalibrating. I could see it, the rapid internal shift of a woman who had underestimated me and was now measuring what that cost her. "What do you want?" she asked. "The truth," I said. "And for it to come from the right place." I gave Patricia 48 hours. Either she disclosed the pension fraud voluntarily, to the board, to the regulators, on record, or my story ran. All of it. Every document, every transfer, every cover-up, including the one she had arranged 7 years ago to remove Simone Berg from her son's life. She did not believe I would do it. She was wrong about that, too. The story ran on a Thursday morning, not because Patricia had refused. She had, in the end, agreed or begun to, but because my editor, who had been waiting on this piece for 8 months, had received a tip from another source the night before and had held the front page. I had 20 minutes of warning. I called Daniel. He didn't answer. I drove to his office. He was standing at his window when I was let in, his back to the door, ink still as stone. His assistant had clearly already told him, or he had read it himself. I closed the door behind me. "How long?" he asked. His voice was controlled, quiet, that particular quiet that is worse than shouting. "I came to the gala with an investigation already underway," I said. "I didn't know you. I didn't expect—" "How long, Amara?" I didn't look away. 3 years, but Daniel, I need you to hear me. What I found, I sat on for months because I needed to know who you were. And what I found was that you were trying to fix it from the inside." He turned then. His face was... I had braced myself for anger, for coldness, for the particular kind of aristocratic contempt his mother had weaponized so efficiently. What I saw instead was something more complicated, something that looked almost like grief. "The story was always going to run," he said, not a question. "Yes." "Were any of it, were we real?" My voice cracked on the word. "It became real. I know you have no reason to believe that." The room was very quiet. "My mother," he said finally. "The envelope." "I know about Simone," I said. "What your mother did 7 years ago, what she was trying to do to me." He closed his eyes briefly. "I didn't know about the money. Not until recently." "I know that, too." The envelope was still in my apartment. I had not touched the money. I had not spent a cent of it. It sat where I had placed it that first morning, in the drawer of my nightstand, a reminder of what this had started as. The night after the story broke, after Daniel and I had sat in his office for 2 hours saying everything that should have been said months ago, when after his mother had called 17 times and I had not answered once, I took the envelope out. I sat on my bed and I looked at it for a long time. Then I put it in a padded mailer, wrote Patricia Langford's home address on the front, and set it by the door to post in the morning. No note. She would understand. The Langford Group's board removed Patricia from her position 11 days later, pending investigation. The pension fund recovery process began. My story was cited in 4 separate regulatory filings. My editor called it the most important piece of financial journalism published that year. Simone Berg's firm was awarded the development contract. Properly, this time, on merit. And Daniel? Daniel called me 3 weeks after everything, not to forgive me. We were past that kind of simplicity, but to talk, to understand, and to sit across from me at a table with no performance between us for the first time, really, in 3 years. It was a beginning, or maybe an ending, or maybe one of those rare moments when you cannot tell the difference. "Why did you stay?" he asked. "When you had enough. Why not just run the story?" I looked at him across the table, at the man I had set out to expose and had somehow, inconveniently, unforgivably, come to love. "Because I wanted to be wrong about you," I said. And for once in my life, I was. They thought they were buying me out. Patricia with her envelope, her doubled offer, her absolute certainty that I was a problem with a price tag. What she never understood, what none of them ever understood, in those rooms built from old money and older arrogance, is that the women they overlook are always the ones paying attention. I came in silence. I gathered the truth quietly, patiently, at great personal cost. And when I left, I was the one walking away, on my own terms, with my name on the story that changed everything. If you like this story, please support us by subscribing and liking, and kindly drop a comment on the location from where you're watching. Thank you.